I'm really loving these weekly chats, and this one is no exception because once again, I am opening up my comments and conversations with my friends for you all to see. Now, I was thinking today, how do I open up this conversation without just, giving it right to you? I mean, I already basically did, right? So, as we get started with Zachariah, I want you guys to ask yourself a question. When was the first time you learned about the truth of Thanksgiving? And while you're thinking that and then you figure it out, write it down so you don't forget. But I also want you to think about American Horror Story if you're a fan, because fuck. This show, we'll get into it. One of my favorite people to talk to on the planet throughout bad times, good times, all the times, shitty times, uh, elated times is my dearest friend, Zachariah the Witch, because Zachariah is intuitive. Zachariah doesn't give a fuck. Zachariah tells the truth. Who better else to have this conversation with? So, without further ado, bring on my beautiful friend, Zachariah, please.
Ah!
Ah!
I don't know what that noise was. Ah!
It wasn't Michelle Halloween noise. It's something I would do.
Ah! Hey, you guys! Yeah. What's going on?
Not much. I don't know if you heard that intro. Really quick, I want to, just again, love seeing you vibrant and glowing. I know it's your lighting and all.
It's the red. It's just
And
the
the
red.
red. Remember
Yeah.
when you showed us when you painted that wall? And I just love seeing you healthy and smiling and vibrant, even though we're probably both faking it right now.
Oh, it's probably because I'm off all those meds I was on too. That helps a lot. I feel like I'm getting back in tune with my body. But also being an actor and performer, and like, you learn how to just push through, and the more you focus on what you want to have in your life, the more it shows on your face. So
That's actually very true. Zachariah, you could walk.
I can walk. Yeah. I can
Before
walk now.
your legs stopped where you just didn't walk, and now you're able to walk again, and I love that. Do you
Yeah, that
think
was
that the meds at some point had anything to do with what was going on?
So there's a series of here's the long and short of it for people who don't know. In September on the 22nd, so the fucking autumnal equinox and a full moon, I was admitted to the hospital. I was in the ER for several hours, and then I got admitted to the hospital because I went from all day during the day. I went for a 5-mile walk. I had my normal day. I had an astrology tarot swap reading that I did on the phone. And all of a sudden I got up from the couch and my legs weren't working. And when I got up, it was like they worked for that split second and then they just gave out. And luckily my partner was here, my husband, and I had my arms around him, and I was in immense pain. And I haven't talked about that day too much for the last like month or two, but I was just telling your husband, I'm now dealing with a lot of trauma from that. Like,
Mhm.
the not knowing was the part that traumatized me. It's like I went into autopilot. But the long and short of it is I was admitted to the hospital. I was in the hospital for exactly 2 weeks. And then I got out on the day that a huge thunderstorm happened, the day after a huge thunderstorm happened. And we were coming back to, another cycle in the moon, and just so many things that were aligned. But the medication I was on was because of what they started administering to me in the hospital. I mean, Michelle, the first night I was there and the second night they put me on Dilaudid, which is stronger than morphine. So it was just a lot, man. And then I was on all these series of nerve medications. I was on anti-inflammatories. I was on some narcotics, and being a sober person too, like, I really had to fight with them about, please don't give me too much of these things unless I absolutely need it. So it was a lot, but the puffiness has gone down. I feel more myself, and I don't have to use a walker anymore, a wheelchair anymore. and I don't have to do physical therapy anymore.
Oh,
So
thank the goddess. Yeah, and
yes.
like, oh, my face isn't puffy. I FaceTimed you in the hospital and you still looked hot. And I'm like,
Uh,
bitch,
it
still
was
look
a
gorgeous.
struggle, man. It was a struggle. It
And
fucks
you
with your
were real with
spirit.
me. Yeah, you were real with me. I could see like the pain in your eyes. I could see how sad you were, but you still
Hmm.
looked good. And I'm like,
Thank
fuck.
you.
This is why I'm
Some
so
people look
glad
pretty
it
when
worked.
they cry.
Yeah. I'm a terrible crier and an ugly sleeper. So I
That's a really
swear.
bad combination. I'm so sorry.
Well, I don't give a fuck. It's Chuck that has to look at it. It's not me. Oh, I'm not supposed to say your name. I mean, my husband. Okay, so we've been friends for, I wish you were around years and years and years ago because I'm old. But last year we connected right away. I feel like we connected instantly once.
You mean 2 years ago?
Fuck, it's going on 2 years.
It's been 2 years.
Fuck, I'm
2019,
telling you.
end of like 2019 going into 2020. Yeah.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. Oh, 2 years sounds better than one.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Um, we connected, and one of the things that I talk about when I talk about you is you were the first white person that I had in my life that was, well, besides my husband, who was basically forced to go with me to run his
Yeah.
line when we were out protesting
Uh-huh.
and going to marches and stuff. He had no
Yeah.
choice, but you were the first white person that was out there because you needed to be out there protesting, putting yourself in danger. COVID, we had just had a conversation. I was on your Around the Cauldron show, and then
Yes.
seriously the next fucking day all hell broke loose. And what makes and still gives me goosebumps to this day is that you were out there. My fucking my only black family who does nothing but talk
Mhm.
wasn't out there doing shit. They never
Mm-mm.
had done anything. Yet you're out there putting yourself in danger with LAPD, counter protesters. And then I had, these family members of mine who hate gay people, you know, um,
Great.
who were like, fuck that. White people don't do shit for us. And the gay people definitely don't do shit for us. So why would we do
Mhm.
anything for them? Mentality. Yet here you are out there for people like them. So
Mhm.
that made me fall in love with you instantly. I was like, wow, I'd never seen that before. And
Yeah.
I'm surrounded by white people all the time. So that was one of the things. So who better to have this conversation with? Because anytime we have a chat, we have to dive into the bullshittery and the true life American horror stories,
Yeah.
which I'll say with a synchronicity, American Horror Story double feature tried to I don't know
I
what that
mean,
was.
it's weird because the double feature, the later half of it kind of touched on the topic of colonization, but it was more of a sci-fi
Yeah.
perspective. So I was like, how weird that we're combining these two things and they kind of line up anyway.
And I'm
So
sure our show is going to be better than
yeah.
that. So we're
Oh
just gonna
yeah,
go with
totally.
that.
Yeah, yeah,
So
totally.
the question I posed in the intro was, when was the first time that you realized that Thanksgiving was basically a genocidal holiday that was
Hmm.
made up for white people? I,
Yeah.
I remember I was living in Pomona. My mom was hosting Thanksgiving that year for her side of the family.
Hmm.
And I always noticed the separation. The black side of the family never came over. There was rare times that they would come over during Thanksgiving. So we would always
Yeah.
split it up. But I remember it was my uncle, Jeff, who is white,
Mm.
we were around the table and we always had this tradition of saying what we're grateful for and blah, blah, blah. So each person, and it was we're a big family. So
Hmm.
he had said, God, I wish I remember how old I was. I want to say, I don't know, I'm not going to even guess, but I was young, still in elementary school. And he was the one who brought it up that, this holiday is a sham. We shouldn't be sitting here, celebrating pilgrims and fucking Indians. They're not even Indians, they're Native Americans. And he told
Hmm.
us the story as kids, the story of, Thanksgiving.
Hmm.
And I remember going, so what else is a fucking lie? And why are
Yeah.
we sitting here? Being a young person, remember sitting there going, what is this for? What about you?
Hmm. Similar, except I mean, it wasn't an uncle. It was more so because my parents separated when I was very young. But I went through a series of like really weird instances in my life where I knew that I looked different when I was younger than most kids that were my age, or had a different background because I knew both sides of my family, and on my father's side, there's all these traditions that I didn't understand and things that they would talk about. Like they would go to sun dances and powwows and sit in the sweat lodge and a lot of different things that they would talk about. And my mom usually distanced me from it quite often. But as I got older, I learned more. But the first instance that I had was finding out that, we we on my father's side have direct native ancestry. We're Cherokee and Seminole, and most of them will not and do not even speak of that day. They don't speak of the dead. They don't speak of the people who were lost along the path of the indigenous peoples of their family. So it's just a really dark time. It's a day of grieving and sadness. It's a whole month of it actually.
Mhm.
So there's just there's a solemn thing that happens around that type of the year. But then on my mom's side, it's like, yay, let's get together and let's do all this. But it was like it was such a big contrast. And being about, I think I want to say I was 8 years old, 8 or 9 years old. Yeah, it was before my brother London was born. That was the first time I started to notice that difference, where I was like, this is so like, why is this side so weird about it, or it feels heavy, and this side
Mm.
is just like ignoring this whole aspect, and oh, don't worry about it, that's nothing to like associate yourself with. And I was just like, huh. But I mean, that's kind of how I think you can contest to this too. As we grew up as kids, that most things were treated that way, like, oh, it's
Mhm.
fine, don't, like, it's just a tradition, it's okay. And I'm like, but again, I think I said this on the last time we talked. I always fucking asked why. I always
Same.
asked why. I always pushed buttons. I always went over the edge that you weren't supposed to go over. And I was like, why don't you want to talk about it? What's going on? you know?
Why are you ignoring this?
Why are
Is
you ignoring me?
I just took it as my mom is a very, and she'll admit it,
yeah.
up until the day we stopped talking, she'll admit, "I'm stupid." You
hmm
know, I am not
Okay.
smart. I'm slow. It took me a year to get, I had to graduate with my sister. She kind of like used her lack of, and see, to me, it's not stupidity, it's laziness. And I've noticed that as I've delved into more white communities and culture,
hmm
it's pure laziness. They don't want to learn more. I used to hear old white person say, you can't teach an old dog new tricks. Okay, then why are you living them? What's the point if you
Yeah.
don't start learning?
pretty much. Yeah. I
Like
agree.
it's
Yeah.
it's it's pure laziness, and it's just downright disrespectful, and there's a
hmm
power trip involved. Um because even though we have Thanksgiving, and I think they stopped celebrating Columbus Day in some schools. I could vouch that they didn't do it at all schools, in
hmm
all school districts. The truth is still not being taught. It's sugar coated. It's
hmm
bullshit. It's, oh well. I remember asking my daughter as she got older, how do first I asked about Black History Month. We're not going to talk too much about Black History Month, and this because this is for our Indigenous brothers and sisters,
hmm
the true owners of this land, who came from this land, who honored it the way we're supposed to. That's why we're fucked. I mean, you can
hmm
watch any indigenous horror movie and see why we're so fucked. It's just duh. I mean, the land is coming back for us and we deserve it. Anyways, so where was I going with this? I've already had too much wine.
I don't know. You totally went Hollywood cliche for a second, but yeah.
I sure fucking did, didn't I? All right, I'll just go to my random notes. Oh, my daughter, I had asked her, "Hey, what are they doing for you? What are they teaching you about
Uh-huh.
Thanksgiving this year?" And she goes, "Well, they told us that, you know." It was so basic. It was, well, they didn't talk about the violence. They didn't talk about, and this is her in like fourth grade.
No.
They didn't talk
No.
about the violence. They didn't talk about the fact that people were killed after they offered, these white men and women
Yeah.
food and showed them how to survive the whole winter. And I'm like, so ask yourself, daughter, what's changed? You know, um, our indigenous land, moving up to the Pacific Northwest has been real eye opening, because the first thing I did was say, what tribal land are we living on? Because I
Mhm.
knew right away, moving up here, I thought it would be more the people respect their tribes more, and they do. They give them
Yeah, but that's
their little bit of
yeah.
land. The tobacco line, what is it? The tobacco discount line is always overflowing. The casinos are booming. But the first thing I did was look at indigenous land. What
Mhm.
tribal land am I living on? It's the cowlets. And were the black owned small businesses. That's where I want to be.
Yeah.
So, but who does that? Who does that? Nobody does that. They just move and they think they own stuff. Um,
Well, that's
it
the
was
system that's been created in this country, if you got the money to pay for it, it's yours.
yeah, and you and I have talked about our privilege because we're both pretty privileged people. Not that it didn't come with struggle, because we both. I know
Yeah.
you struggled. You were homeless at one point.
Mhm.
I was almost there. I even almost chose to live unhoused at one point in my life just a few years ago. Um, but then we work and we get these things like you bought a house. I moved up north. I'm making my dreams come true. But there's this level of guilt, and I'm always trying to figure out how to use our privilege to help, or not even help, but just kind of be like, hey, you know what? Stop paying attention to my bullshit about Halloween and go pay attention to, you
Mhm.
know, this, and think of it as a horror story, because it is a horror story. It's
Yeah.
one we're living in right now. And most
Yeah.
people say, well, I don't want to think about it. That's why I watch horror. It's not real. Well,
Yeah. I mean, there's been a lot listen, there's been several interviews that I have done in the past, with I don't even need to name names because that would be bitchy, but it's interesting when during a time of, like, pushing for advocacy, for change, for awareness, and for change, again, I'll use that word, I've had those interviewers tell me as an interviewee and as a special guest, "Oh, well, let's not focus on that because people wanna escape when they listen to this show, or people don't wanna think about that, like, that's really heavy." And I'm just like,
it's the
"But that's
problem.
that's the problem, exactly." So, it's already ostracizing in a way, and not for me, but I see other people who come from big families that have these big traditions that they've created generation after generation after generation. And it makes me think of that quote that you just said, you can't teach an old dog new tricks, but it's like you can by choice be the first person who breaks a tradition within your family. You can be the person that says no. You can be the person that has a boundary, that has some fucking self-respect, and that tries to show up for other people other than yourself. Because
Mhm,
everything about everything that's tied into this month going into the next, I mean, the second Halloween's over, we both groan and roll our eyes because of so many reasons, but the biggest one is the capitalist
mhm,
structure that's part of the oppression of
mm,
people of a different race other than fucking white, you
mhm.
know? And it's really strange to watch. I feel like we're in an episode of Black Mirror every time this time of the year rolls around, or you hear about people being trampled on Black Friday. You hear about
Oh my
uh,
god.
just all the bullshit that comes near the end of this month, you know?
And
Um,
how the fuck people can sit here and bitch about the economy, but walk out of Costco with 5 fucking flat screen TVs, and
yeah,
I it baffles me.
yeah,
Like, I'm
yeah,
not saying that I'm not saying I'm not gonna go out and shop, but you know where I'm going is right to the small businesses.
yeah.
I love to gift. I love that I people think, "Oh, well, you hate Christmas." I don't hate Chris I mean, I hate Christian Christmas. I hate the capitalist bullshit that
Right.
comes along with it. I hate, but at this point, this is gonna be last year and this year have been the best holiday seasons I've had in a long
Mhm.
time as a mother, as a wife even, because I have to tell you, the shit that we put up with to make our families happy, back in the day when we were forced to go to 5 different fucking houses on Christmas
Oh
Day.
my god. Oh my god. Yeah,
I mean,
seriously.
years, and our kids were never happy. What were we doing? We're sitting there appeasing what? Our fucking parents and our families who don't give a shit about us any other time of the fucking year, and the only reason why we were
Mhm.
there is for them to talk shit about us. So,
Yeah,
my mom especially was like, "Oh, you can't the gifts, talk about capitalist
yeah.
motherfucker, like, and give into it and play into it." My mom and my sister, but it feels good to actually go, okay, now I can shop with a purpose. I can shop for my friends and not aid in white
Yeah.
supremacy.
Well, and
And
that's the other facets of it too is, when people complain about these days where they have to gather with family, it's like family is the people that you choose at a certain point in your
yes,
life. It really is. I mean, if you ain't a grown ass adult, I don't consider a person a grown ass adult if they can't distance themselves from toxic parents or toxic behavior from family members. I'm like, you need to
same.
grow up. You need to grow up. You don't owe them shit. Tell them to fuck off and walk away. Or
Oh,
tell them to go to therapy. Tell them to check themselves. Like,
you're
assess they need to assess their privilege as well. Like, just because you gave birth to me does not mean you own my body. You don't own my soul, okay?
Isn't that funny? And speaking of like, I was thinking about this today too, about how do we talk about the how people feel like they own other people? Well, oh,
Ugh.
get over it. Slavery happened 400 years ago. You're not gonna get reparations. We got stimulus,
Hey,
didn't we? We got
okay,
everybody got a stimulus. That was black
listen.
people's money.
Listen,
Okay.
slavery still exists. It just has a different face and it's been revised.
Yes.
Because think about it. We've been deceived over and over and over again to think that a work day or a whole day is 24 hours. Bitch, a day is less than 12 hours. And then you spend 6 to 8 hours at work. That's
Some
fucking slavery to me.
sometimes
Um,
even more. And
Having to work 3 jobs to
just
pay
you're right.
basic
Mhm,
income rent, to
mhm.
live in a shitty part of town with a shitty car, with, you know what I mean? Like, I'm not saying that things define your quality of life, but your ability to have stability and to have your essential and basic needs met, that also determines how active you can be in defending other people and other causes. Because if you're distracted all the time by living in fear, if you're distracted all the time by being afraid that you're going to get the boot from your apartment, of course you're not going to give a shit about anything else because you're trying to survive. So
Slavery.
there's so many fucking layers to this, Michelle. And it's just
Mhm.
like, it's hard to tell people one way of looking at it, because it starts with a small seed and then it sprouts into rotten roots everywhere.
Everywhere. It's a
And that's
tree. It's
what
the rotten apple tree.
it's become, that all throughout the country.
Yep. And it just seems to me, I don't know, are you feeling this too recently as Halloween ended? Maybe I wasn't paying attention in October because I look at every tree and raindrop that falls while I'm up here. It seems like they're reviving their assholiness. Like I was
Yes.
on with my Instagram being disabled was actually not a bad thing for me because it just reminded me of like, okay, you didn't set out to be an Instagram influencer. Also, who gives a fuck? You were going to do some cleanup anyways. It's actually refreshing to see stories I wouldn't have otherwise seen.
Mhm.
So I was even on Instagram. I don't know. Every day that I'm on, I'm looking at like Portland pictures, like
Mhm.
beautiful things about Portland, and it'll pop up with some right wing bullshittery. Do you know they're infiltrating even the BLM hashtag?
Yeah.
And it just seems like there's this uptick in the hate all of a
Mhm.
sudden. So it makes me wonder, like, what else is coming? I already know that we have more struggle to endure before
Mhm.
things get better if they do. And it's all about adapting at this point. Um, but what I'm starting to notice, it seems like there's an uptick in the rhetoric, like, we're not gonna put up with it. The defund the police seems to have lost its steam. Have you
Well,
noticed
it's
that?
I
Uh,
it's I don't think so. I think it's also been obscured and hidden more because now there's certain, especially on social media, it's kind of like when the Occupy movement happened, there was a lot of stuff that
mm,
was blocked from us being able to find it. It's
mm,
like being shadow banned. There's a lot of things that have been diminished, but that's also because of who controls the outlets that those things are streaming through.
mm,
I mean, how often have you watched, like, they were just live today in downtown LA because they go every day, BLM does, from Los
mm.
Angeles. Every time I watch their live stream, it glitches out or it gets shut down multiple
Right,
times. And everybody
right.
else, like, I can go live for over an hour, never get shut off once.
Doesn't that, yeah, see what I'm saying? I guess I'm just seeing it because I was personally attacked with mine being shut down, and then I noticed another outspoken woman of
Hmm.
color who's plus size and, free sexually expresses herself sexually,
Hmm.
and not sexually. She got shut down for calling out a large white-owned corporation in Europe. And I'm
Mhm.
going, oh, of course, Thanksgiving's happening. Let's
Yeah.
get back to that. How I was looking up ways, I always look up ways to how do we change things?
Yeah.
How do we honor, the people that we stole, that we're living on their land? We're still living on their land.
Yeah.
This very ground that you're on, the very ground that I'm on. We're still living
Mhm.
on their land. But how do we decolonize Thanksgiving? So there's
Mhm.
ways to do it. Last year we made tacos, and that I'm sure pissed our neighbors off because they smelled tacos instead of turkey. I don't give a fuck. And now that
Yeah.
we're up here, we're probably gonna do the same. I was actually going to look up some ways it was so funny. I was like, I love witchcraft. I love
Mhm.
being in tune with nature and other human beings sometimes. It's already stuff that I already do. It's basically just honoring the food that's indigenous to where you live, and
Mhm.
making it up and being grateful for it, but also taking it as a day of, remembering what happened. And I'm like, okay, so we kind of nail that every year.
Yeah.
Uh, we don't go all out. We don't do the turkey bullshit. We don't, it's been years since we've done that, especially since we left our families. How are you going to survive next week?
I just talked to my friend on the phone about this last night. My basic tradition that I've done now for it's become my personal tradition for about the last 5 years. Even before that, I avoided this fucking day. But um, the biggest thing that the thing that I think of first is every November, every year, I donate to at least three charities. The one that I donate to every year is Cherokee Nation, for obvious reasons. And then some other things that even my husband and I have talked about, like there's some soup kitchen volunteering. There's some ways to help the communities that are right around me, who happen to be usually predominantly Black and brown people.
Mhm.
So going and volunteering for that. And then I've learned to just block phone numbers. I've learned to not respond to the text because you know how this works. Most of the time around Christmas and Thanksgiving or other big holidays, you get a text from people who don't even fucking talk to you, and it's
Yep.
like, fuck off, you know. Um, and so I've learned to shut those people out, but I take it as a time to do my research, read a book, journal, give gratitude. It goes back to those things where we assess our own privilege.
Mhm.
If there is, I think there's a meeting this week. I might attend the LAMP project, which is looking at male privilege, and it's run by White People for Black Lives. They do a Zoom meeting once a week or twice a week, and I go to that pretty frequently. I'll go to my other meetings that I attend online. I'm always finding petitions to sign. Like, there's so
I
much that we can do from home, so we don't have to interact with anyone.
right?
So
Every day. Yeah, there was at
every
one
day,
point, yeah, I
yeah,
was signing like 5 petitions a day,
yeah.
at one point, and I know I signed a few the other day. My husband is still like, "Why are you still donating to the ACLU?" I'm like, "Because did you not just see the lawsuit that was fucking filed in, 30 miles away from where we live in Newburgh, Oregon?" Like, they were
Yeah.
there, trying to
Mhm.
handle some shit that this racist ass school board was,
Yeah.
well, they're still getting away with it. They, in fact, fired the superintendent. I think what white people especially need to understand during this holiday, if you're feeling some kind of white guilt, which
Mhm.
honestly, I don't care if you feel white guilt. Good. I'm glad. Now you need to learn and move on. Now you need
Like
to
that,
learn and
yeah.
do better.
Yes.
So feel that white guilt. I'm not going to sit here and stoke that fire and make you feel guiltier, but it's just a
Mhm.
matter of learn, learn from this.
But also listen. Please
And
listen.
and that's
That's
the other thing. Don't they get so defensive.
oh my
Get so
god.
defensive.
All the time.
But I struggled too. I'm like fully aware, but you didn't struggle. It's so simple, I have to admit there's times where I let it all go. I was a tired mom of 4, under 10 at one point. My kids were young when it all just hit me, and I was sitting here in these communities with these horrible, horrible, horrible entitled white women who weren't even rich, just
Mhm.
but they had a little bit of status in their PTA cloud and day drinkers, and I remember being told, um, I was the right kind of Black person because I wasn't I which made no sense. I'm loud as fuck. They told me I wasn't loud and I'm not ghetto, and I'm like, "Oh." And I remember going home later that night and going, "That was fucking racist," but
That's
you know
so
what?
racist, dude. My
Like,
god.
I remember going home going, "Fuck, that was racist," but my stupid ass kept going to these parties with the hopes that I would just be left alone, and it never happened because I'll get into that another time. This isn't a conversation. I just wanna make sure that people understand that when you're sitting there, guzzling over your turkey, my older kids love to play that video where it's like greens, beans, greens, mashed potatoes, sweet potato. I can't do it right. You know what I'm talking about? I also
Yeah.
have a song I really want you to hear because it reminds me of you every time my fucking kids play it. So
You have to send it to me. Yeah.
I will, but it's just really funny how, like, even, black folks,
PTA bitches
and I'm sure they suck on each other's all the time.
all the time. Like,
All the time.
you want to
I
suck on my zipper?
Oh, by the way, we just finished watching the 3rd season of You, and
Ah,
oh my, did you watch
I
that?
fucking
Like,
hate those women so much.
I was like, I had to live that.
Oh my God.
And
I
all
hate
of a
all of
sudden
them
we're
so much.
polyamorous, and therefore I was just like, "This is my fucking nightmare.
And
Get me
now
out
we've
of here."
segued into our next topic of the evening.
That's how these conversation other or and wives, they were swapping.
They
I
were
have
swapping.
stories. I have so
Yeah.
many stories, and I remember being Chuck going, "None of these fuckers are our type. We're good."
Yeah. And that's how most of those shows are. Also, I mean, I've seen Netflix go from being so many things because it's just another network if you think about it. And being a writer or being in the industry too, watching the performative shit that they do to try to
To
wave a little
appease everyone.
flag, and be like,
Yeah.
oh, look at, we put 3 brown people in our show and one of them's the main character, but then they die in the 3rd episode. And it's just like, fuck off. Or like,
I
you ever
can't.
noticed how they always kill gay people in most of those shows, or there's some
Yeah,
tragedy tied into the gay person's life, and I'm just like,
yep.
fuck off.
Every
um
time I'm going, "This is why I cannot I love my horror genre, it's just
yeah.
fuck, like, it just needs to stay indie in
There's
my
there's
opinion.
a Instagram account I follow, look, the Lakota Law, and it's the Lakota people's like law Instagram. Like they post all about the ban the access pipeline, like all the different oil pipelines that they're trying to create throughout. Michelle, there's literally like dozens of them that are being blocked. They're trying to
Yeah.
block them. Like, it's going to pollute the shit out of our water. But it kind of goes back to your question. That's why I brought it up, which is, acknowledge the fact too that indigenous people were some of the first water and land protectors as well. They were the ones that always talked about how the earth is sacred, and how they didn't use the word climate, but think about it. It's
Mhm.
that connection to earth and respecting nature and animals and the air and the water. Like, and then we fucking came over here and was like, oh, that's mine now.
Oh, you do the
Like, oh
twang
my,
too? I have
oh
some
my.
liberal rednecks that I found, and I'm just like, "Wow, this is fascinating." But yeah, it's like I've never understood because I used to be told I was selfish, and I was thinking about this all the time.
For what?
I always bring things back to me, but I was told at a young age I was selfish because I questioned everything, and I didn't there were things I didn't wanna participate in, but I was told, "Well, you're being fucking selfish, Michelle." So, what I did when I grew up and became a mom was try not to be selfish. So, it always baffles me when
Mhm.
people are, like, laying claim to a land, and when I would say,
Yeah.
"Well, something isn't fair," or well, just like today, I saw another meme where it was like, "Okay, if this Kyle Rittenhouse is let off the hook, be
Yeah.
prepared, Black Friday starts early." And to me, I was like, it's funny, but that's what white people use or privileged people use. Well, that you're just they're destroying property, bitches. And looting. You stole land, and you basically just one of your minions just got away with fucking murder, vigilante
Yeah.
murder. So don't give me
Yeah.
this shit that you're worried about your property when it wasn't yours to begin with.
There's
Um,
so many instances where, I forget her name, but she's been on several city council. She's confronted her own city council, and she even said, my oppressor will not be my savior. And
mhm,
that's why I'm here all the time fighting with you. Because
yep,
that's the thing about activism and change, is you're going to fight with the people that you're fighting against all the time. Sometimes you're going to fight with the people that you're fighting for because
yep.
they have a different way of going about it. And then the other times you're going to be fighting with yourself and your own self judgment and worry and guilt and shame and being tired. But don't ever let it distract you from the truth. And that's the thing, is, even in politics, even with a lot of these holidays, there's two wings on a bird, you know? So it's like,
Mhm.
pay attention to the fucking bird, not what it's flapping around and trying to distract you with. It's the fact that, like, this shit sucks. It's a part of a system of oppression, slavery, genocide. Um, and it's just, it's fucking gross that we're going to sit and ignore it and act as if there's not a problem,
Oh,
you
well,
know?
it's our family. We're not gonna worry about that later on. Fuck this
We
family.
love, we love the Indians. We, I'm like,
Well, and that's the first
wow.
thing I heard, Indians. Like, my family, from
Yeah.
what I recall, never my mom's side of the family, other than my mom and, my sister and that ignorance,
Yeah.
never said Indian. Always Native
Mhm.
American. That's another thing that bothers the fuck out of me.
Well,
Um
because it's the whole, like, before the 1600s, because what the
Mhm.
pilgrims came and they had, when was that? 1620, 1621, around there. And that was the Pequot people and the indigenous people that it's somewhere in the East Coast. Was it Massachusetts? I can't remember. But that whole 3-day thing of them sharing crops and harvest and coming together of their thanks, like, it was also revolving around trading off young girls for slavery. And
Mhm.
like, even before that, and I don't want to get into Columbus and all that shit, but it's it all has a root to what we also weren't taught in school. And there's other things that we know happened that we don't speak of. And that's
Yep.
why, even now with modern day, when you watch these trials with people like fucking Kyle Rittenhouse, and he's just getting off the hook, and you compare him to a young man of the same age who committed a smaller crime, who's been convicted for a long sentence and will probably never get out of prison
Ever.
because he happens to be black. It's like, you guys aren't seeing the same story that I'm seeing. Like, you're
And
not connecting the
and
dots,
they
really.
don't wanna see it because
Oh,
everything that I've heard is out there. He was defending the town. Bitch, he didn't even live in that town, and why sit and that'll get into another conversation that we're gonna have, is
yeah.
about, gun violence and their freedom of firearms and all that other bullshit,
Hmm. Yeah.
um, for selling weed or smoking weed. That I know people who have been incarcerated their entire lives over a weed charge.
Yes.
So, yeah, I have
Yeah.
I smoke and do weed all the time, but it's always with some kind of fucking guilt
Well,
because I can do it freely, and that person got put away for it.
well, think
Bet your
about this.
ass, though, if
Think
I got
about this
pulled
though
over.
too. Think about this though too. How many people do we either know or know someone that knows somebody who owns a weed business or a weed grow operation? And sometimes they happen to be white, but it's like they're literally profiting off of something that oppressed another person and put
Yeah,
them in prison for their whole life on a minor charge. So it's
yep,
like, we need to retroactively go back and start releasing those people for those petty crimes, because it's not a fucking crime if it's legal now. Fuck
it's not.
off.
They release pedophiles earlier than they do,
Ugh, don't even get
these
me started on that
motherfuckers. So,
shit.
everything is an American fucking Horror Story, and we'll get into that right now.
It totally is.
So, everything is so when American Horror Story came out in 2011, 10, 11,
Yeah,
I
somewhere around there.
was fucking stoked because first of all, I was already fans of Ryan and Brad, okay? Because I watched Nip Tuck and I loved FX because they
Yeah.
were always pushing the bar. Always pushing the
Hmm.
bar on censorship. Even with Nip Tuck, I'm like, they're fucking on primetime TV in
Yeah, they sure
2004.
were. They
Like,
sure were.
I loved it. And so I was stoked with American Horror Story. I remember that was the thing that I would watch late at night, 10, 11 o'clock when my kids were asleep. Chuck wasn't doing the horror movie thing back then. So that was my
Hmm.
my pleasure. The show was absolutely fantastic. And up until recently, it
Hmm.
was it was taking well, that's doesn't work either because yeah, a conversation for another day. But American Horror Story was an outlet for me. It was creative writing, it was beautiful, it moved me, and it fucking terrified me. Murder
Hmm.
House, Asylum, all the ones with Jessica Lange in them seem to be absolutely stunning, but I also I love Evan Peters, like,
Well, a lot
he
of the ones with Jessica Lange were actually written for her character,
right,
and
because they wanted her. They
yeah,
wanted
the
her.
stories that revolved around her characters. Absolutely. Yeah.
I had recently rewatched Murder House. I'm like, "Gosh, she was a blatant racist cunt to this." Like,
Yeah, she played that part really well. It was kind of creepy.
it was very creepy, and that was the part I'm like, "Ew, why do I like this so much? Oh, I shouldn't like
Yeah.
it." But it was because she was absolutely fucking frightening.
Yeah.
Um,
She was also
you
an
know
ableist and a sexist too.
oh my
So
god,
she was all
right?
those things. Yeah.
She was like Chuck's mom,
She
but
was the
got
epitome
more money.
of the 50s repressed housewife.
Yes! Yes!
Yes. Yes.
Exactly.
She okay, boomer. She was that person.
She
Yeah.
was.
Yeah.
But she was also the star of the show, and I remember when she left, they gave her, I loved the ending of Freak Show, the
Mhm.
way they gave her her send off, and I'm like, the show's gonna suck. Eh, I
And were you
I
right? Were you
I
right? Were you right?
I mean, I
Uh,
liked what came after Freak Show? Hotel? Was it Hotel?
I
Um,
believe so, yes.
I liked Hotel because it was all about our beloved Cecil. You know the Cecil. You've been there a few
Bitch, I've
times.
been there. Yeah.
And
I
so I
worked
was
in
like, yeah, and I think they released Hotel, I think a year or two after Elisa Lamb was, found dead there.
Yeah,
So
it was
hey,
rough.
drastic. So it's
Hello.
really interesting to me that I liked Hotel. I liked Gaga because at one point I thought Gaga was going to be some kind of queer white-ish savior for us. And now
Yeah.
she's like, oh, I'm going to be in this movie with Bradley Cooper, and it was whack.
Yep.
I don't know what the big deal about that movie was. So the only thing that held up American Horror Story for me after Hotel was Evan Peters. I hated Roanoke. That could have went so well. It was
Yeah.
such shit.
Yeah. I couldn't keep up with all the just it was too much. I was like, "What? What's happening? What is
Well,
this?"
and
Yeah.
I'm gonna backtrack a little bit, but I'm gonna go with once you stop running out of creative writing ideas, take a fucking break.
Yeah.
Fuck FX. FX is not hurting. FX creates wonderful shows all the time. Okay.
Yes.
Like FX has some good shit. But take a break. So then they kept
Mhm.
going. I hated Colt. Colt started off okay because it was like real life shit.
Really
Real
complex story too, and I was like, "Oh, this is" like, it got good at one point, and then it got bad again, and I was like, "Son
yeah.
of a bitch."
Yeah. And that's what American Horror Story seems to do. It's like it's one of those things where you're like, "Fine, I'm gonna watch. Okay, well, this sucks, but I have to see it through until the very end."
Yeah.
We always hope that it gets better, but sometimes it doesn't.
That's how I felt with the double feature too,
Oh my god. So we'll
and
get
the
into
yeah,
fuck
yeah.
this show. Okay, I was stoked because I did you watch the stories, the American Horror? Yeah, you did because
I
we talked about
did.
this.
Yes, I did. Yeah.
Hated Hated. This is me
Excuse you.
going, no, I don't say that. Roanoke was terrible. I remember, I think I talked to you the day after I watched it, and I wanted to say, I really wish they would have cast you as the gay couple, one of the gay
You
couples in the
know, I
role.
didn't understand that casting choice. I was like,
It
it
was
was kinda
so
like
bad.
the one guy really irritated the shit out of
The one
me.
that
Like,
looked like the front man of Creed.
ugh,
Yeah,
yes, that's what he fucking looked like, isn't it? Holy shit, I didn't think about that. That is what he looked like.
yeah,
I was
he
like, "Get
did. I
out of
was,
here, man."
you're not gay, and I hate when they don't cast real gay
No,
people.
he is gay, but he was just
Oh, is he?
annoying.
But he's
Yeah,
not
he
a,
was just
he's a black one. Well, just like
fucking annoying.
double feature
But also
the
too, I'm gonna interrupt you. As an
no, go
actor,
for it.
I don't like typecasting, so if somebody straight wants to play a gay person, go for it, but be good
Well,
at it.
and I was gonna
Be
bring up
good
that
at
point.
it,
Yeah.
please.
Reeve Carney and Josh Hutchinson, not Josh Hutchinson, fucking always Josh Hartnett. Is that
Yeah.
his fucking name? In Penny Dreadful?
Oh,
That scene
yeah.
alone got me
Yeah.
watching gay porn instantly because I
Hey,
was so
girl.
turned on. I was like, this is the hottest fucking thing. And they're two straight dudes, and they did it.
Yes. I love Penny Dreadful, it's great.
Right? But I have to bring up one other point about Penny Dreadful, and we'll do this another show.
Which also crashed and burned at the end too,
It
yeah.
did. 'Cause I don't even remember because I fell asleep through it. Um, fucking I can't find that scene on Netflix. 'Cause they have it on Netflix. I can't find that. So I was trying to show my husband that scene with Josh and Reeve. It ain't on there. It's like they cut that shit out
Wait, Penny
on
Dreadful's
Netflix.
on Netflix?
It's on Netflix, and the scene where
Oh.
Reeve and I'm sorry, Dorian and what's his fucking werewolf character's name? I forgot. Um, I can't find that scene. It's like they cut it, and I'm like, really, Netflix?
Are you sure it
Really?
wasn't a fantasy dream that you had, Michelle?
Fuck. What if it was?
Because I'll say right now, I'm trying to remember that, and I'm like,
You
did
don't
that
remember?
happen?
It did.
Ooh, maybe
It
this is the Mandela effect moment right now. Maybe in
That's
another
awesome.
dimension, you experienced it, and I'm like, what the fuck are you talking about?
I've been known to have that happen
Well,
because
because the
apparently I
Dorian
exist
Gray
on TV.
character, does have a relationship with I want to say they're transgender male to female, but he also poses as a man sometimes too.
Mhm.
She also poses as a he. So it's like
Mm.
maybe that's what you're remembering because I don't
No.
remember. Okay.
No. It happened. God damn
Okay.
it.
I'll have to
It
watch
fucking
it. I'll have to
happened.
try to find it. Maybe it's on YouTube. Like they show little
I
snippets.
think I tried YouTube, but what if that did happen because I don't put it past,
Huh. I don't know.
um, me being in other dimensions, but it was the hottest thing I'd ever seen, and yes, I was watching gay porn instantly right after that because
You're
I was
trash.
like, I am trash. I love porn, like, and I'm like, I get it, you know? Not that I
Uh,
was ever opposed to it, but it was the hottest thing I'd ever seen. So when I saw Evan Peters do and, what was it? Was it Roanoke? Where that was the only good part of Roanoke was
he
when
was
Evan
the
Peters.
he wasn't he gay in Roanoke and he was gay in Apocalypse?
Yes.
He was a gay character in both of
He was
those, wasn't he?
Yes, and it was
He's
Apocalypse,
funny when he plays a
actually.
gay character. I'm like, he just I feel like he was channeling some hairstylist and somebody else that he just like either had to be around all the time on set or someone in his life. Because
It
there's
ha
just as a gay person or as a whatever queer person, I could identify a couple of like the intonations of how he I was like, oh, I know someone like that. That's fucking funny. I was like, that's a stereotype and a half, but it's funny. Yeah.
And I love it. I actually enjoy it.
Yeah.
So it's just interesting how FX has and American Horror Story has always pushed the bar. I've never confirmed or denied if where Ryan and Brad fall. I really don't give a shit because I actually do think they're brilliant. I just think they need to stop. So they took a break in 2020. They started with American Horror Stories, which again, I was like, this isn't anything new. I am a horror for anthologies. So I thought it was a great idea. They always have these great ideas and they have these great promotion ideas. And then
Oh,
it's like,
totally. Their promo is
blah,
great. I got to work on one for Freak Show. It was awesome.
bitch. We're gonna have to talk about that.
Yeah.
Um, So then we get on to the next, short story, and it was the drive-in, which was great. I love that because it was new, it was different, it
Yeah.
was a lot of fucking fun,
It
and it
was
brought back
cool.
some old characters. And then we got the bro Christmas one with Danny Trejo and the bro house.
So terrible. It
I
was so
love
good.
that
It was so
episode.
good and so bad. I loved it.
Well,
I love revenge and like
same.
I love when people get their comeuppance. That's how I feel. I'm like, you fucking deserve that, you piece of shit.
They sure that Christmas
And they're
tree.
like the gayest straight guys. They're like so gay. It's like
You made my husband spit.
they are the gayest straight characters. It's so stupid. They're like, yeah,
But
I'm like, oh my god, get out of
what's
here.
that toxic masculinity? It's like you're
It's
gay.
toxic masculinity. That's exactly
Yeah,
what it
you're gay.
is. Yeah,
And just
yeah.
own it. It's 2021. Please own it. You have resources. Come out. We're safe space. I'm a safe
Well,
space.
here's
Come
the other
out.
thing, though. Here's the other thing, though. This is another subculture and another fad that's happening right now. And I can say this as a queer person for the straights out there. We see you. We see you, straight men, trying to bait gay men to get more followers, to try to get more attention. Fuck you. Okay. Fuck you. Because I'm too good for that shit. No, thank you. No.
You heard
And
it.
so they do that on TV now too. They're like, we're gonna imply some homoerotic shit, but they're not gay. And it's like,
Just
fuck
so you know,
off. Fuck
it's
off.
what is it
Yeah.
called? They're in touch with the metrosexual. I remember when that
Oh
came
my
out.
God. It's evolved into like, or all these guys are like, oh, I'm pansexual. I'm like, go fuck yourself. Like,
Get the
sure.
fuck out of here.
Okay. Sure you are. Right.
Well,
Yeah.
uh,
Some of them are, and I believe it, but it's the ones that are like they're having it reminds me of when I came out as bisexual and I had such a hard time admitting who I truly was. And it takes time. So everybody's at their own pace.
of
But it's when
course.
you know it's a farce and they're just doing it for attention. I'm like, shut up.
In
That's
ratings.
but that's very common with American Horror Story because Ryan does that a lot because he likes to hire young, fit, usually white guys that are going to play these like kind of gay or ambiguously straight characters. And I've seen
Why
that in
is
the
that?
last. It's been in the last 3 seasons, and he
Yeah.
also did it with that other show he wrote, Hollywood, is that what it was called? And it
I
was
don't know. I watched 911, which they're both involved in.
yeah. There's
It
always like
it
a gay under there's always a gay undertone, and I'm not
yeah,
complaining. As a queer person, I am not complaining, but what I
but it's
am
not
gonna say
real.
it's just it's not. It's like I feel like I'm watching a musical.
Mm.
That's what it reminds me
That's
of.
actually a really good way of putting it, because 'cause I'm like, I did see little birds flying out of ears,
Yeah.
and I'm waiting for some, like, Shrek-like character, Prince Charming from Shrek,
Yeah.
to bust out.
Yeah, like
That's a really good way of putting it.
even going back to this recent season, I'm like, it the weird like the second half with the alien shit and these like teenagers that are like, we're gonna have a family. And I'm like, nobody your age wants to do that. Shut the fuck up.
Shut
Like,
the
what
fuck
is wrong with you? Oh my God.
Okay,
Uh,
so double feature. Okay, so there's like two good things in American Horror Stories. I didn't expect much. I didn't even know double
yeah,
feature was coming out because I wrote off American Horror Story when they did 1984. I was like, enough, enough.
yeah,
This sucks. I'm done.
yeah.
This is bad. So I'm like, all right, I'm gonna
You
give it a
didn't like
look.
the slasher, you didn't like the
I love
slasher.
slasher shit, but I can watch Nightmare, or I can watch Friday the 13th. Another
True.
way, it was poorly executed, because then I got like Stranger Things, and then we had like the Fear Street, which was
I
fantastic.
loved Fear Street.
So
Yeah, that was
fucking
great.
good.
That was fun. Yeah.
Well written. Give me all this, and I think
And the three different
1984.
timelines, that was so cool.
It was
That was
well written, and
that
it
was
was
cool.
like
Yeah,
fucking brutal. And oh.
yeah.
Um, but what pissed
The
me
bread
off?
cutter machine.
Oh man, I was like,
I hate gore, but that was cool.
oh, but the gore was fucking epic in that,
Yeah.
like, but it was just I was done with I watched American Horror Story for its originality. So when you come
Yes.
and you give me the same thing I've already seen, get the fuck out of here. I was busy in Halloween 2019 anyway, so I just wrote it off.
Mhm.
So I was like, okay, cool, double feature. They're gonna do something new again. All right, American Horror Story, you had
Yeah.
a break. Let's go. I
Mhm.
enjoyed the first half. Up until the last like 3 episodes, I want to say,
Yep.
because
Same.
the concept, I was actually frightened by those shaky, creature things.
Yes, I agree.
Um, I was questioning if I had any talent throughout the whole
Oh, yeah, that was a good way of spinning it for sure, but it
right.
also alluded to some shit that maybe Ryan experienced or Brad experienced in
Oh
Hollywood.
shit.
That's what I thought about too, was that deeper undertone of that story. It's
Oh
like, are they
shit.
trying to tell us something? Like
Like, is this like what rejection? Because when we think of rejection, in my mind, I'm like, fuck it. I just move on to the next opportunity
Yeah,
anymore.
I'll suck
Um,
somebody else's dick, it's fine. Yeah.
basically, just a different way. Start with the left ball. This is the right. But I remember I always keep in mind what Stephen King said, and he's, a horror legend, who problematic at times, but horror legend. But what he said to me that always stood out was he got 50 rejections before he got one acceptance.
Yes.
I don't get rejected often, but I don't take that for granted by any means. I expect to be rejected every time I put myself out there.
It's
So
wisdom. It's wisdom. That's how
it
you
is.
learn. Yeah.
It is. And so, I was wondering, like, okay, what if there was a pills? But it opened up a conversation. So I enjoyed the shit out of it. I loved, and I'm sorry I forgot her name. I loved the scientist, the chick who played the scientist, how she played this role, this powerful, intelligent woman who was like, hey, I'm gonna try this experiment on this Cape Cod town. I don't even think about Cape Cod. I always think of it as stupid.
Yep.
And that's for rich people. Beautiful setting, but then they got lazy the last 3 episodes, and they definitely fucked up the second half of double feature.
Oh
I
my
wanted to
god.
have this conversation. I was having this conversation with Death Rattle. Oz and I were going back and forth about, is there going to be some connection between the two of them? Maybe that would have made it better. But the
That's what
second
I
half,
thought, dude. That's what
you
I
did.
thought. Yeah.
Like, give us something, because all these characters, but I knew by episode 2 of the alien scene that this was all trash. Like, this
Yeah.
is what
They
the
really
fuck is
did try to
this?
push to a double feature. It was no streamlined story. It was literally
None.
2 separate stories. Yeah.
Yeah, which wasn't the biggest disappointment. It really
No, it
wasn't.
was nice to get 2 shows in one,
Yeah,
but the story was lacking in the second half.
and
It was really
it was
bad.
rushed. And
It was
we used to remember getting American Horror Story about the same time Walking Dead came out, when I used to watch that.
yeah.
Um An American Horror Story started in September of every year in the fall and lasted until
Mhm.
February.
Yeah,
So I was hoping, "Oh, okay, this won't be rushed." It was terrible. It was so bad.
it was really bad. I
It
agree.
I love conspiracy theories that, highlight the government for the garbage that it is, but
Yeah.
this was
No, they
this was
also
not okay.
used he also okay, so in the second half, because I love sci-fi, but I also, again, too, I love true sci-fi or
Yeah.
true things that are not fiction, but just metaphysical. And so in the second half with the alien story, the character Valiant Thor was a real life documented person that worked with the government who was supposedly from Venus. And there's all these documents and articles, and there's even photographs of him. And he apparently had access to technology and medicine that we did not. And you can find it all in the CIA database. Like, it's been on Coast to Coast. They talked about it on documentaries on Netflix. I'm just like, I remember watching it like 3 years ago. I'm like, "Who the fuck is Valiant Thor? He just looks like some tall, thin white dude." But come to find out, he was an alien. And I'm like, "What?" So when they put him on the show, I was like, "Oh, this is gonna get really cool." He was just a fucking idiot. I was like, "Shut
Yeah.
up." I hated his character. He was a whiny little bitch, but that guy, that actor always plays a whiny little bitch.
He
So
does,
I'm just
doesn't
like,
he?
he's
Like,
typecast.
God, I'm over you. And
Yeah.
then there was the scene with him and Sarah Paulson playing what was her fucking name? Mammy, the fucking Eisenhower's wife.
Yeah. Who cares?
I okay, look. Sarah Paulson, stop crying, first of all. We had enough in Hotel. I've had enough. We get that you could cry on command. You're
He's
fucking
escaping!
talented.
The killer is escaping! I had to do it. I'm
I
sorry.
love no, it's perfect. I'm done with her. Like,
Uh,
you married a geriatric, that's great,
yeah.
but well, yeah, I think she's met that was her gimmick. Like, my orange wigs are my gimmick, but it's like, to give it a break and show us what else you got for a moment, please.
Yeah.
Um,
Well, that's why I
I
loved
hated
her in
her.
Asylum. I loved her in Asylum.
She
She
was
did the revenge, fuck you. I'm the final girl. That's what she
yeah.
was. And it was so cool. But
Well,
then she turned into this whiny bitch in all the other seasons. I'm
they
like,
were
what
like,
is going
"Oh,
on?
you can cry on command, we can work with that." So it seemed
Yeah.
like they took Jessica Lange out and they were like, "Okay, let's go ahead and revolve this around Sarah
Yeah.
and her crying ability, and we could ride around this." Like, I liked her character in the first part of Double Feature where she was that the unhoused, like, bronchitis ridden whatever she was. That was her
Mhm.
eyebrows were like very, very distracting.
Oh, her
'Cause
makeup was great.
right?
Whoever did the makeup for the first story in the double feature
And
should get an Emmy. Seriously. It was
fantastic, right,
great.
no, I agree,
Yeah.
I just that story was really good up until the last end. I Macaulay Culkin was actually really,
I
really good
love him
addition.
as a serious and a comedic
Right?
actor. He's so
Same.
great. Yeah.
He is, and, it's funny because Chuck is like, my husband, "Why is this motherfucker on here?" I'm like, "He's not dead, don't start he's not the Home Alone kid, he's grown up now, and he's
Did you see
actually
him
very
in Party
personable."
Monster?
Yeah,
Did you
I
see
loved
Oh
that
my
movie.
god.
So, I think
What?
that's where I was like, I love Macaulay Culkin,
Or in
like,
Saved?
oh, I
The
didn't see
kid in the
that, but
wheelchair. Oh, he's the kid
I
in the
didn't see it.
wheelchair, and it's so good.
I was
It's
coming
so
off of,
good.
like, The Good Son and,
Oh, man.
Party
I thought that was his
Monster.
brother. Was that him or his
No,
brother?
that's him. His brother's in the film, I think.
I thought
His brother
Kieran Culkin was the
no,
evil
no,
one.
no,
Oh.
Macaulay is the main character,
Oh, okay, I'm switching it around. Never mind.
but I
Never
do
mind.
think he's in some, Kieran's in Signs,
Oh, okay. Yeah.
the M. Night Shyamalan
Yeah,
movie,
yeah. Which I actually like that too.
I do too.
Yeah.
I have a whole thing I wanna talk to people about M. Night Shyamalan too,
Mhm.
because I don't hate him.
I
I
don't
don't I
either.
don't
Yeah.
I don't see the problem with any of his work. Well,
Yeah.
maybe like the Avatar one, but I feel like that was
Avatar was shit. Let's
yeah,
be
that was a
real.
bad one,
Yeah.
and I don't think that was his fault,
Well, also
but
the casting was terrible.
yeah,
That was
that's
the
for you.
biggest issue too, is the casting, but
It
yeah.
wasn't Shyamalan material,
Okay, so
honestly.
what did you like about the first half of this current season of American Horror Story?
Okay, so what I loved was I loved the writer thing, okay, because it's a struggle, and then the wife was an, what's her name? Lily Robb was the Instagram influencer who wasn't talented.
She was
And
an
then you
aspiring
uh,
interior she was an
yeah,
aspiring interior designer slash influencer. Yes.
influencer. And then you have
Yeah.
this daughter, this kid
Who's a
who's this
fucking genius
overachiever.
violinist. Yeah.
Yeah, an
Overachiever. Yeah.
overachiever. And then you have this entire town. I think what really got to me was the struggle. I get it.
Yeah.
Because I'm in the midst of this whole like, okay, stop fucking around and show the world what you really got, Michelle. So I get it. So I related to it. I moved to a place where I felt like I belonged to go ahead and do it. So everything that I watch, I have to relate to it in order for it to
Mhm.
resonate and for me to talk about it. So I love the fact that it was revolved around writers. And then you get to the scene where I had no idea because I didn't read up on anything or watch trailers about Double Feature.
Yeah.
But when I saw fuck, I forgot her name. I've had 2 glasses of wine. Frances Conroy and Evan
Love
Peters
her.
on that fucking stage.
Yeah.
I think I rolled on the floor like, "Fuck, yes." Them singing their duet,
Oh, they were my favorite duo in the show.
right?
Yes.
Like, they were just perfect, and again, I get it. It kinda reminded me of something you and I would do if I didn't
Well,
have a
because
family.
they're really good. Frances Conroy, especially, she's a character actress, so
Yes.
she becomes each character that she's portrayed. Like
Isn't it
I
it's
just
beautiful.
I remember being getting chills when she was the angel of death in Asylum. I was just like, man, so cool, so cool. I love her. Yeah,
She she is a goddess that they should be revolving the next Coven around, which I wouldn't be upset if
yeah.
they did a revisit of Coven.
I wouldn't either. It'd
Um,
be cool.
so
Balenciaga.
so I love that. But so I really got excited for that part. I love the way Macaulay Culkin came in as like this, well, I'm a junkie, but I'm also talented. So will somebody give me a chance? But he
Yeah,
also had that internal struggle. Don't take that black pill. Everyone knew about the black pill. I loved how people found out later on
yeah.
about the black pill. How they already knew about it, but then they were like tempted. I love the temptation. I loved the writing. I loved how dark and foggy
It
the whole
got
first part
it got
was.
dark because it also touched on the topic that I talk about a lot when I work with clients or the work that I do, where it's like we live in an age of instant gratification. So of course, if there was a pill that you could take that would make you 1,000 times more talented or tap into your full potential, of course you
Of
would take
course you
it.
take it.
Even
Like,
if it had a huge risk of making you a horrible, disgusting monster, of course you would take it,
of
you know?
course. If I
Yeah.
had to s if it made if I w first of all, I don't think I would take it because I'm actually a very cautious person. And I also have
Wait, but
imposter
hold on.
syndrome.
Is that
I have
because you don't
imposter
think is this because you don't think you're really talented?
No, I have imposter syndrome. I think everything I write is trash. I had all this time today, Z, to, like, go ahead and, like, "All right, schedule's clear up until 6 o'clock tonight, so go
Yeah, yeah.
ahead and" there's these stories that I have that just need some fucking finishing, and I'm writing, and I'm just like, "Don't think about it, just write. Just write this fucking story." Yeah, I could use a pill. Okay.
Yeah.
I'm starting to think, do I need to become an alcoholic like Stephen King or the
All
character
work and
in
no play makes Michelle a dull
Jack of
girl.
the basically I have so I'm like, if I had some kind of like
Listen,
assurance,
I really think what you need to is this is what I do when I'm writing a script. I always have a reading or a writing partner. Because if it involves multiple characters, I need some you usually need 2 other people to help you when you have a
yes.
cohesive story, and not to coach other people about how to write, but
No, I want it.
you're gonna be the person that creates the general arc of the story and the whole, like, beginning, middle, end. That's you. You have this whole idea, right? It's in your mind, and it plays out like a movie. But then when you have other 2 anchors to help you, you have the person that reads a dialogue if it's a script, or they read it with you and help structuralize it to keep things cohesive and like balanced. Then you have a third person who helps you edit, go through grammar, but also is the person that maybe comes up with jokes or other like flashes of ideas that elaborate something that you had. Like maybe they know a little bit about history, maybe they know a little bit about gore or fantasy, or you know what I mean. So
Yep. The
I think when you
context.
feel stuck, what really helps a lot of people is finding a couple other people that are also writers that can give them input, feedback, and support. Because that's the other thing too is like that's why I use reading prompts. That's why I write a lot of stuff and then I post it online, it's not because I'm just doing it for myself to do it. I'm also doing it because I'm curious what bites, what grabs people's attention.
Mm.
So you got to just
I picked that up
continue.
about you. Yeah, just
Yeah.
keep going and just have that. I learned that early on too. Like I have an editor.
Hmm.
I need to start figuring out how to get her. Well, first of all, she's in California and she's doing this out of the kindness of her heart. She has a job, so
Uh-huh.
she does the grammatical stuff. She won't do content because she likes my content. She's all, I like reading, and I've had that a lot. They like reading, but I write because they read it in my voice. They read it in my prose because whatever. But when you're
Hmm.
trying to write a story, a fictitious story around an experience, I struggle with that. So it
Hmm.
reminded me of something that you said today when we were texting that actually,
Read it. Yeah, sure.
Michelle, oh, I don't want to cry in
Just
front
read
of
it, you
people
fucking
because
bitch.
I was
Read it, you whiny whore.
I'm Sarah Paulsoning this.
What does it say? What's in the box?
You did that too well. Okay, Brad. I wanted you to have this autographed book. Wow, wine. When I met Elvira, I let her know how much she inspires me as an artist and as a writer. Cassandra put her signature magic in here. She's been in the business for 40 fucking years. So do not give up on your dream. Here it is. Write about what makes you happy, create what helps you heal. Thank you for your friendship. Love, Zachariah the Witch. Because Zachariah picked up a book that is on my reading list and had it signed.
She signed it too. Yeah, absolutely. Yep.
I
Cassandra
can't.
Peterson.
I'm not
And
going to do this.
that was the thing that I said too about, since we're talking about writing and American Horror Story, a lot of, I think for both of us, we're drawn to certain stories because we imagine what's going on in the mind of the writer that created it. And
Yeah.
that's like, when you see a show struggle, you're like, oh, why is this person not inspired anymore? What happened? And the thing with big TV shows, because I think you did say this earlier, FX will be fine. Like he could have taken a break, he could have walked away, but it also is like, are you that hard up for cash? Did you sign a contract too soon before you really had an idea? Because the whole focus on writers and the story of being on the coast to get away, to get back into a creative headspace, that's what felt like happened with Double Feature. Was like
Yep.
he ran out of creative things to write, and I was just like, that was a good way to play into that idea. But at the same time, the last 2 or 3 episodes they tanked for me. I was like, fuck, like everything that could have gone wrong did, but not in a way that was like gratifying, because we all knew what was going to happen.
We did, and I wanted more, and I don't understand. It was probably budgeting, it was probably deadlines, it was probably all the things. Even I'm kind of following Matt Oren with his second book process because he's writing
Yeah.
for Llewellyn, and
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, oh, I hope they don't fuck with his work. You know what I mean? But
They usually
I'm
do.
just getting this thing. Yeah, Llewellyn
Yeah.
especially. I'm starting to notice like and I don't want Matt to feel I can just I don't know, I'm just getting this thing and I'm like, oh, I hope this doesn't compromise his work. And that's where for me where I can't say whether, if I was ever approached by, let's say, Brad or Ryan or FX, would I could see taking that opportunity. Me, I'd be like, look, here are my fucking terms. And I'm not
No,
sitting here trying
that's
to
what
do
you
this
should
for money.
do. Always.
I don't give a
Always.
fuck about money, and I have depression and anxiety and imposter syndrome, all these things that fuck with my writing process, but also work with it. So please don't fuck with my flow because the viewers will be there when they'll be there. Really good example of this is fucking Dexter. We watched Dexter. That was one of my favorite fucking shows of all time, besides Breaking Bad. So
Yeah.
Dexter, we can watch like once a year. Like we were revisiting it before we even realized that they were making, they were coming back with it. A
Yeah.
10-year, decade-long break. Okay,
Yeah.
was it really that long? Was it a whole decade? It doesn't feel that long to me, but there was already fabulous writing in Dexter, but how long did that fucking show go on before they ended it? And remember, people were pissed.
It got weird. It got weird at the end. It got
Did.
really weird.
It
Nobody
got
liked it.
strange.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I remember the last season being that way. Like, this is stupid. Why is it always the last fucking season?
When they brought in Julia Stiles for a second there, I was like, Okay. No, because I felt like she was also redeeming herself in some ways as an actress, as a serious actress, because I believed her character. I really did. And I was like, okay, bitch. And then but it just got strange because the ending was really lackluster. And it also was obvious that Michael C. Hall was fucking what's her face and they were married. And it was just like,
Stop. Just stop. And you
just
know what?
quit. Just quit.
We're
Stop
okay.
it.
We're fine. I'm not
Yeah.
upset that Stranger Things is gonna be over, you
Oh my
know?
God, I'm so sick of the same story. It's like
I'm not
11
upset.
saves the day
Yeah.
again.
Give me something new. Now, I love Stranger Things, but it's like, at a point, it's just stop. And
I
I
wanted
love
them to
that.
talk about the other gifted children that were tested on.
Yes.
I wanted, like, when they brought in her sister, I was like, "Fuck yes, talk about this character
What
more."
happened to
And then
her?
they just made her disappear. I was
Yeah, she's
like,
gone.
she was so cool. She was like
Yeah.
the perfect I loved that idea, but then they just completely washed it out and just made it all about the other side and like 11 closing the portal, and it was the same thing from the previous season
I get that.
again.
Yeah, again, it was the same repetitive thing. But Dexter, so a decade, okay?
Uh-huh.
I was we watched Dexter again, pandemic.
Yeah.
We watched it again this year at some point, I think when we first moved up, and just to get ready for November, the big
Yeah.
November Dexter returns, and I'm going, this is gonna be good. Do we need to do this?
I have
And
a
then that
feeling it will.
first
I haven't watched it yet, but
oh,
I haven't. Yeah.
bitch, that
Yeah.
first episode dropped, that is a comeback. Like,
Good. Okay.
I am talking like I have goosebumps. This shit was fire.
Okay.
They I was like, I need you to watch it like tonight. Okay.
Okay.
I gotta catch up on Chucky, but I need you to watch.
Oh, you're watching Chucky too? It's so
I was
funny. It's so
I wasn't gonna
good.
give it I wasn't gonna give it any play until Mystic was like, I need you to watch the show. I'm like, fine. I love it. And I'm like,
It's
what is
great. And I
this?
love Jennifer Tilly. So I'm just like,
Fine, I didn't see that episode. I'm like two
no,
behind.
yeah, okay.
So, but it was really, I need you to watch the Dexter because that is a comeback. And that's where I'm like, American Horror Story, maybe you need more than a year off.
I think they do because so yeah, going back to it, when I watched American Horror Stories, I was like, this felt to me, again, as a writer, the American Horror Stories series, the anthology, reminded me of when I scrap stories that I've written like halfway through, or I have like a pretty good story, but I'm like, meh. And I just leave it in my writing prompt book, or I leave it in a document on Google Docs. You know what I mean? And I know I don't usually go back to it, or I'll pull shit from it and use it for something else because there's a really good meaty part that I love, but it's not a good story on its own. You know what I
Preach.
mean?
Gosh damn it.
So that's what this anthology felt like with American Horror Stories, was because I was like, the Christmas episode with Danny Trejo, fuck yes. The episode with oh my god, what was that? The movie one, the drive-in. I loved it.
Yeah,
Reminded
that
me
was
of
good.
it kind of reminded me of The Thing a little bit too, where I was
Right?
like you don't know where it's coming from right away. And then just like it was so violent. It was just like balls to the wall, like you're gonna fucking die. It's like, oh my god.
And a movie director, because it's like, how many times have you thought, okay, like if you watch a Serbian film, you're gonna be cursed for life? That's how
Yes.
that's what I got out of it. Like you're gonna be
What's
some
that?
kind of
What's
I've
that
never
other one
watched
with
it.
the one with Ethan Hawke? Was it Sinister or
Oh my god, that movie's fucking scary.
the
Sinister is
lawn the
horrifying.
lawnmower video? I'm
Yeah,
like,
is that so
no, get out of here. Like for a second, I was like, wait, is this some real shit? Is this real? It's
right?
like,
Because the way they filmed it, it was like, is this
oh,
found footage of
it
some
was
like smut?
terrifying. But that's
Smut,
what I
but
love. Those are those elements. I feel like it's the same thing. That's the point of why I brought this up. The anthology made me think, okay, these are bits and pieces of ideas of stories that they had that they couldn't put into American Horror Story, the series. And
yep.
so that makes sense. That's what you should do when you don't have a fresh idea for a whole season of one story. But when they were like, "Oh, this double feature's coming out," I was worried, and I was right to be
Oh, I
worried.
was too. Weren't we all?
And then
And that's
I loved the first half. I hated the second half.
hate it. I don't understand the point of that. It's like if I
Yeah,
do you remember being kids? I don't know if you did this. I'd go to one movie and I'd sneak into another. That's all I got for double features as a kid. I'd
I did
snuck into the
sometimes.
next
Yeah, Mhm.
Yeah, so you go into the next movie to that was my double feature, but at least I got to choose it because if I had to for back in the day, if you were forced to sit through a double feature and what no, the first double feature I ever really experienced was the Black Cauldron and ET.
Oh,
I
shit,
won
okay.
both fucking times. That shit was
That's
fire.
amazing, that's great.
Right? Like, and I was like 5 at the time, 4 or 5, and I remember that shit
Which
because
is a
it was
little some of that's a little heavy for a 5-year-old. That's like, you know.
well, yeah, the well, ET to that point, like, when he got sick and they found
When
him in
he
the river,
was sick, oh my
that
god.
scared the shit out of me. I
It
was
was
so I
so
wanted to
scary.
leave. It wasn't the Black Cauldron that scared me, it was fucking ET sick. I didn't
Oh,
wanna
it
do it.
was. It was fucking weird. I was like, "Oh my
Horrifying.
god." Yeah, it
And
was
I was
really weird.
it's like, no wonder why I'm so fucked up in the head. So I'm like,
Yeah,
I'm gonna watch ET. No, I gotta watch Chucky.
yeah.
So I don't know. I was like, okay, double feature. I tried not to have any expectations. I really did.
Sorry, I'm gonna move this closer to me.
You're
A
fine. I know what you're
little
doing.
far away.
Bouncy.
Okay. Ah.
I just I I just love getting your text messages at 11 o'clock, 11:30 at night. This is trash. American
Oh my
Horror Story.
god, dude! It was because you're like, because I told you I didn't watch the final episode of the second half. I fell asleep, Michelle. I swear to God, I fell asleep twice trying to watch it on 2 separate days, and I wasn't tired. I just fell asleep because I got tired of watching Sarah Paulson be in the all white ship thing with all the people that were complaining about being abducted and having to birth these like hybrid things, and I'm just like, can we just finish the story for fuck's sake? And then
And
the ending was exactly what I thought it was going to be. The bitch
it
finally got
was
her comeuppance,
yeah.
and then, but I did like that there was no redemption for human beings because that line really stuck with me, and it reminded me of what we were talking about colonization. It's like you had your fucking chance. Now it's
You
our
fucked it
turn.
up. Yep.
You know, so
I'm
it was
mad.
like the aliens are like, "Fuck you, human beings! You destroyed your planet. Why would we give you a second chance? We're going to take over
Exactly.
now."
You've
You
had
know?
plenty. I
Yeah.
get that part. I get and I really did like the effects of what's her face as the head
Oh
alien with the
yeah,
big
it was
eyeball. That
cool.
was cool.
That
I
was
wanted
cool.
more. Okay, here's another thing that kills me recently with American Horror Story is
Shitty actors.
no, what's the girl with the jaw? I don't mean to make fun of people's
The jaw.
when you're ugly though. What's her fucking name?
Is she
Leslie
blonde?
Grossman.
Oh, I hate her.
I
I hated
cannot
her.
stand that bitch. Stop putting her in American Horror Story.
Well, I
Like
don't know. I don't know where she came from.
she started in Cult, okay, and then she's played
But
the same
where did
fucking
she come from
character.
before that? That's where I'm
I have
like,
no
where's
idea.
this bitch? Was she in like a rom-com? Like,
She right?
what is her deal?
Have you seen the advertisements for Susan Sarandon in this new Big Country fucking show? I watched
Oh,
911, so unfortunately that's on a Fox network because I
yeah.
like that show 911 because Angela Bassett is God, if
She's
there
great.
was a God.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna watch that show. But again, it's another Brad and Ryan production. So I'm like, it's good. If cops were actually fucking Athena, the world would be a better place.
Probably. Yeah. Probably.
And I don't absolutely hate firefighters either, but I was also like, okay, so I'm gonna watch the show, but then it's like Leslie Grossman came on. So they have this commercial for this big country, and I'm really like, fuck you,
Mhm.
Susan Sarandon. What are you doing? We don't need any more country shows about country stars coming up from their trailer parks and making it big. I don't want to see that. So I was really disappointed. That's the show Leslie Grossman should be on. Maybe that's something they pulled
Oh,
her
she
from.
totally should be on something like that. She fits the bill, totally.
Oh my
Like, I'm
god.
like, why don't go over there? Bye.
Yeah, you don't belong. It's like she wants to be part of the cool kids club. She's kind of like
Yeah.
some people we know in the Halloween and horror community that don't need to be there.
I
And her
really
voice
love,
doesn't help.
I really do love Angelica Ross, though. Like, I'm so
Yeah,
impressed with her acting and her depth. And like, I was watching her, and as like somebody who used to do theater and still kind of does,
you do.
I, I do technically. Her hand movements as the alien, and like I was
Yes.
like, you're an alien. It's so cool.
Yes. And
she
that's what I'm
just,
saying.
she
Give me
embodied
more of
the alien.
her.
Yeah,
Yeah. Leslie
she really
Grossman was
did.
not needed in either
Yeah.
one of these. Like her playing the dickhead agent. I'm sorry. I don't do Hollywood stuff, but they're not all like that. You know what I mean? Like
Mm-mm.
stop, you know.
Yeah. Well, she basically already was a vampire without being a vampire. you know?
She
And I
she's
mean,
the other girl
that's
with
a trope
Robinson.
too. Like, I think you know, because you lived here. It's like there is that trope that exists. Like we do joke about the LA vampires, but they're real types of people. They suck the life out of everything, and
Oh my
they
fucking gosh, they do.
take, and they're clout chasers, and they want everything that they want because it's for them and their ego. They do nothing but drugs that focus around their ego. They go to nothing but parties that focus around their egos. They try to match another person's ego. It's all peacock bullshit, you know?
Uh,
Um, so some of those characters in the first half, did it have a name? What was it called?
the white one? Oh, the red light? What was it? The red light? It had something to do with that red light.
I can't remember. But
Fuck!
anyway, that first half, like all about, being on the coast and all that, it just, that's what I mean. It felt like these two writers of the show were basically saying, we've run out of ideas, so now we're going to talk about how we're struggling as writers and how it was after Nip Tuck to try to find another pilot series to launch. Because that's what it
Damn,
sounded. It's literally what it
damn, you
sounded like.
nailed it.
That's what it sounded like to me. I was like,
Even the husband is like, "Fuck," like, Z nailed it.
yes, because that's literally what it was to me. I was like, I see what you're doing, bitch. Okay.
Yeah.
Because
So,
the thing
just
too is like when you said you could relate as a writer, I was like, I could to a fault because we don't have agents, we don't have representation,
I think about it in a way.
we're not getting all this like attention all the time. I mean, we're getting some pretty good traction, but it's like I don't know if I'd want an agent up my ass like that that's trying to tell me that my job is more important than my family and trying to tell me how to live my life and limiting what I write. And I'm like, no.
And, it's a really interesting thing too. It's like, thank you for enlightening, people like us, Brian, too much wine,
Blah,
Brad.
blah, blah, blah.
Brad and Ryan. Thank you for enlightening us on the scene because it makes me go, okay, Michelle, reevaluate. I've said it over and over again. There's times where I got caught up, not that I'm, anything huge, but there was times where I got caught up in the fun of Hollywood. I got caught up in, oh, okay, let me go ahead and do this for, a few more followers or people to
Yeah.
read what I'm doing. And it ended up being one of the biggest, a lot of the biggest mistakes, that I've learned from. Not that I regret any of it. I just
Mhm.
learned from them. But it brings me to a point. I was listening to Between the Reads podcast during one of their uh October Reads episodes. And what Audra does is she focuses on Black indie authors. And she was
Okay.
doing a whole thing on October horror authors. And she was talking with a friend of mine, Sylvester Barzy, who is a horror author. And they were talking about self-publishing versus, going with places like Llewellyn. Like when I was reading Pam Grossman's book, she had called out Llewellyn saying like they only seem to enjoy, and I think they published her book with it in there.
Mhm.
Um, Calling out Llewellyn of like, you only focus on white occultists. You're not,
Yeah, that is
and you're
true.
not focusing on, people like Juliet Diaz and whatnot. Like I'm proud of Matt and all. I just hope that he doesn't, get caught up in
Well,
what the characters got caught up
he
in.
also
And
comes from the queer channel facet. So that's also what works in his favor, I guess. But
yeah,
I'm just like, it's always white queer people too.
it is, and that's just it, always white, you know what I
Yeah.
mean? So it's like, I don't they were saying, like, well, with Black authors, do you really wanna get published by a major publishing company? Because here comes, "Oh, well, you gotta change this." Well, why don't you put this in there? And then you end up with the situation like fucking HBO, not even revitalizing
Yeah.
Lovecraft Country.
Yeah.
So to me, I don't want a big company or an agent or anybody putting that shit in my head because I'm already empathetic. I'm already vulnerable mentally to
Mhm.
where you're gonna be like, oh, here's a book deal, money, your fam, or fuck your family.
Mhm.
I'm gonna struggle with that. So I'd rather just self-publish and stay humble and quiet.
Yeah.
Yeah, as best as I can.
Yeah, I was just learning about, in the last couple years, I learned how to, if I even if it was just an idea, I could submit it to get it protected through the Writers Guild. Like
Yeah,
it's $20, and I've done that several times because you never know. I mean, you could be talking about a loose idea that you have, and then some motherfucker tries to take it from you.
exactly. And
And I'm
I've learned so much from you with that. Like, hold that shit to yourself or
Don't
with your
reveal
trusted people, do
all of your
not.
cards. Do not
And
reveal all of your cards
ever,
ever,
ever.
ever.
That's like the first piece of advice. Like, I wish I had actually Chuck, my husband, did say that. Like when I had started with, I was so excited with that company
Oh yeah,
that,
that one company.
the
Yeah.
one, he
Will
was the
you?
first one to go, "You need to be careful." And I was like,
Yeah.
"It's fine. It'll be great." And that's how I am. So I have to really be careful.
Well, that's happened even, even with the experience that I have now and some other stuff, which I can't reveal my cards right now, but there's things in the works, and it's just like I've learned the hard way. I will say I've learned the hard way that, you cannot expect people to show up for you the same way that you show up for yourself. You
Right.
can't. And
Right.
that's even, except for your close inner circle and the people you trust the most, sure. But when it comes to new collaborations, anything where you're associated with another collective of people or like some writing collaboration, never ever expect them to care as much as you care about the
Mhm.
content or the story and the context of what you've created. And that's kind of like, even with what we're talking about with these series that we watch, it's like you can see it in a different way because you're like, man, was it the network that fucked this over? Was it because the actor got an attitude about something in the script? Was it a producer that pulled some plugs? Or you know what I mean? And that's the thing, is like some of the best stories, even reading the Elvira book,
Mhm.
some of the best stories are the ones that you don't hear until years down the road that were never even revealed
Yep.
because nobody wanted it then, you know?
That's what happened with so many of my favorite authors, like,
Hmm.
the posthumous fame.
Yeah.
It seems like that's my jam.
Yeah.
You know what I
And
mean?
that happens a lot with music, but that also is because we have, as human beings, especially in America, we have this obsession with hawking after death. We love chasing after death stories and tragedies. We love that, like we love to create our own romantic interpretation of this artist's struggle was so much this, and I relate to it so much. And it's like, no, you don't know shit because you didn't talk to them. But that's the point of storytelling, is understanding the story for yourself because it goes through your filter of your own brain. That's great. But it's when you try to project on other people. Like, I mean, we can have all the opinions we want about American Horror Story all day, but there's probably people who will see this and be like, fuck you, it was great. And it's like, okay, I don't agree with
Right?
you, but
And but that's the fun of it though, is and I love the fact that's the things that I like to appreciate is the fact that we have those platforms where we can have a discussion about it. Wouldn't you have
mhm.
loved to have a discussion with Roger and Ebert about why their opinions were stupid about a film that was actually fantastic? Everything?
They hated, you know what movie they hated? Elvira's movie.
I know, yeah. I remember there was something came out about that before even reading the book. I knew that they had something to say.
But it was just really funny because I was like, interesting. You supported her this whole time, and then her movie came out that she worked 3 years on, and all of a sudden you're like, wah, wah. But it's whatever.
And it
That's how
and
it's show business.
and that's just it, show business, and I'm like,
Yeah.
"I don't want any part of it," but you're right. We can talk all this shit about American Horror Story, what we would do wrong, what we would have done.
Yeah.
I really, and it's I would love and these are the interviews I would love to have one day or just conversations like,
Yeah.
"What the
Same.
fuck? What happened
Well,
with
I
that?"
even think about in the future, because maybe a decade from now, but I think about all the this, I need to stop saying content, all the stories that I've already created.
Mhm.
And the ones even that I even wrote 10 years ago that became whatever they became. So it's like, I think about recently from 2020 Ghosts of the Past and how I got to write those stories for those locations that were immersive theatrical productions. I was told so many times with my first one at the Cosmopolitan in San Diego, which was about Donald Copper, who was basically like Donald Trump, and some of these other things that were about the pandemic, that were about the Spanish influenza as well. It was like a mirror world,
I remember-ish.
I got told by so many people, and so did, Jacqueline, this is too political. You guys made this too political. This is like, and it's what we said earlier. People just want to escape. They don't want to face the truth, and that's the point. I guess why I'm making this a subject of conversation is, as a creative person, whether you're a writer, you're a dancer, you're a singer, you're an actor, if you're a performer, if you use any of the fucking muses, it is your job to push a narrative or tell a story to people that make them look at life in a different way, because
Right.
art is what? It's subjective. And
Yep.
so I would hope that we all create something in our lives that makes people look at what we do and go, huh, it's
And
that's the point. Is it's the point.
yes.
Like, it doesn't, you don't need to be subversive. You don't need to be, but you can, or you could be political, but you don't have to be, you know. But I want people to like look at the stories and the things that they watch and the shows that they absorb and just be like, is this good storytelling or are you just bored?
Yes. Yes, and
You
and
know?
that's it right there. It is a form of art.
Yeah.
It is what it is. You don't have to text me that. Excuse us. Um,
Is my nipple showing? What is
no, the Wednesdays are like he's the one pushing, making sure I'm doing these chats every week, which I'm
uh-huh.
having a blast with because again, it's just open conversations. And I
Yeah.
do it for people like Raul of the Dead who are like, "Can you do your podcast again, but just
Yeah,
do
yeah,
it
yeah.
audio?" And I'm like, "Yeah, yeah, yeah, fine.
I gotta get
Sure."
back on mine too. Oh my God.
You
Yeah.
really do. But it's just so funny because this is like his party day of all days. This is where he gets trashed every Wednesday night. He's on the couch, like
Oh, so
trash.
Wednesday's like his Friday or Saturday.
Yeah, but he gets up and goes to work the well, he doesn't go to work, he goes to the basement, but anyways, back to what we were saying. Art is subjective and I'm with you as a creative person. Like if I can
Mhm.
put something in your head that makes you think I've done my
Yes.
job. I don't want to hear about, oh, well, you shouldn't have said, or and that's not what I'm trying to do with this conversation about Double Feature or any of the American Horror Stories that were just awful.
No, because I think we're both happy that it even exists, honestly.
I really am because we have
Yeah.
something to go. We can have these conversations and go
Yes.
because one thing about American Horror Story, unlike The Walking Dead, I'm not going back to Walking Dead. That needs to
No,
die.
I'm not
That needs
either.
to
It's
go.
so bad. It's so
Done.
old.
Yeah, yeah. Stop.
If you want to be engaged in that story, read the comics, read
Yeah,
the graphic novels. Those are
but
beautiful.
I
Yeah.
can't even do a zombie anything anymore because I mean I my life was embedded in that show at
Yeah.
one point. And because it was so good, but then
Yeah.
till it wasn't. But then we had simultaneously American Horror Story. It's something I look forward to, and like I said from the get-go, I get excited every time they come out because they're again, their production. The
Mhm.
intros were worth watching bad season
Yes.
4.
Yes. They totally were.
Intros
Yeah.
were it sometimes. Most of the time, well, up until again, I have my favorites, but it's one show that I could say, despite all this shit talking, when they come out with something again next year, I'm gonna watch it and I'm gonna see it through. The only
Mhm.
one I haven't seen through was 1984, and I'm not going to. I don't need to, but
I mean, you would not be surprised at the ending. I was just
no,
like, "Pff, okay."
no. But I have
Yeah.
hope for this show as well because there are times where they come out the bag and surprise the fuck out of us.
Yeah.
Doesn't happen often, but I still have hope for it. And I love I love what they do. They have me watching a show about cops in LA. They have me
Yeah.
watching shows about LAPD and actually enjoying it.
Mhm.
What else have they done? I don't know. But I just know that I
Well, then
really enjoy them
there's
as
the
a
other
writer.
things too, like Glee, Scream Queens, you know,
Oh,
like
I
those are
love Scream Queens. That was so much fun.
you know, I love I love, but it also had fucking Jamie Lee Curtis. I mean, of course we loved it. Like, duh.
We don't need Emma Roberts, but we needed Jamie Lee Curtis, like,
Yeah, I don't like
uh,
Emma Roberts at all. She's a
neither do I.
psychopath. Yeah, like in
I'm
real
not
life.
interested. I'm not
She's also
interested in her.
physically abusive, apparently. So,
Oh, she's Amber Heard. They must be friends.
girl, she's scary. I'm not into that shit.
No, I'm not into crazy white women that wanna
No,
harm people.
no.
Um, but it's just so funny because we do have these and they are an outlet, but that's what horror is, and, a lot of times when I've heard, with horror noir and, actually immersing myself into a Black community where I actually belong in,
Mhm.
um, a lot of what a lot of the chatter is writing about real life horror because what are
Oh
we
yeah,
afraid of? We can't keep people keep recreating horror movies. Like we don't need another Lost Boys. We don't need these remakes. What we need is some original horror.
yep.
And we're living that shit every fucking day,
Well,
whether
I mean,
people relate to it or not.
look, you know what movie I saw 3 times in the theater? I went to the Vista Theater, and then I went to 2 other theaters to see it. When Get Out came out, when I
Yeah.
saw it the first time for my birthday, when it first came out, I was like stunned. I loved the story. I loved how it made sense of what I would say to my friends. I would always joke and be like, dude, white people are fucking scary. And so
Mhm.
when I saw that movie, I was like, oh, they did it. They
They
made white people scary, like in a way that's, part of the culture of
Yep.
understanding like this weird hush hush creepy community that like is a predator on top of black people for fetishizing them and creating this like weird amalgamation of what they desired. And I was like, ew, it was so gross. And it was a little bit mixed in with slavery and
Yep.
subculture and like all those things that exist. And I remember seeing it and I had to go back to it again. Like a week later, I saw it again. And then I watched it again at like a month or like at the $2 theater. And I was just like, this is so good. And it had a mixture of comedy and it had a mixture of thrills and like jump scare and like you wanted the people that were bad to fucking die. You just wanted them to die so bad. I was just like,
Uh,
oh, it was
and,
great.
it was definitely groundbreaking. It truly was.
It was for me because of the
Well,
fact that he was a comedy writer first and foremost. So
right?
and to switch gears, I was like, this is great writing. This
Well,
is
and,
so good.
he
Oh, wait. So when you got kicked off, I was still on. So I'm just like, derp. I thought it like shut down.
like, weird. Well, it's funny because I told Chuck, I was like, "So what happens?" Like, "Well, Z can have the show if we get cut
Oh
off." And
man, I should have taken over and be like, and now it's my show.
so in case that happens again, but I will try to wrap it up. I don't even know what
Yeah.
I was talking about because
We are talking
we're
about the storytelling, like Get Out and the writing, but
oh my
yeah.
god, just it was so profound, but it was a movie for me that white people needed to see.
Hmm.
Because I don't think they went in thinking they were gonna see a movie about their people in their neighborhood. I didn't think
Hmm.
that they went in to see, so it was a really good tactic to get white folks into the film. It even got non-horror black people watching the film,
Yes, because
which
it
was
had
good.
it had a bit of a political message as well. It was a
Well,
hot topic for sure.
and the ending of it was, it was really profound for me because he wanted to give black folk a gift, and I loved that. Like, "Here
Hmm.
you go. We've had enough." Um, fuck, if we could just get with that. I also encourage people to watch again, but just again, going back to black folk having a minute, with, writing in horror. It's just we need more exposure. We definitely need more.
Yeah.
I was kind of critiquing Axel Carolyn a bit. She's someone who I admire. She's a director I admire down there in LA. I remember one of the Midsummer Screams, my husband was actually in her panel. He was like, this Axel Carolyn. I'm like, I know, right? But
Hmm.
Tales of Halloween is one of my favorite Halloween films, but there's no people of color in that movie. There's like two, excuse me, there's two people of color in that film. So what we need are more modern day Jordan Peels. We need more modern day. Again, I love Brad and Ryan. I love what they do. I think they're talented. It's all fun.
Hmm.
But they need to do a little bit more for
Yeah.
everyone, which they're pretty good at. But they need to be I would love to see more like in the show 911 there is because you were bringing up they always cast this particular gay white person, dude,
Yes.
or whatever. Well,
Always. Yep.
in 911, there's this whole story with a black couple, Angela
Yeah.
Bassett's character and her husband. Her husband ends up being gay. So they get
Ooh.
divorced. Yeah. I've been telling my husband for years, like, I know you're gonna turn 55 and come out. I know it. He gets so mad. I'm like, but he comes out and they end up having
Worse
this
things could happen.
right? Right? But in the show, they just make it harmonious, but they also included black queers. And, that's a
Yeah.
thing that I need to see more of is black
There's a
queers.
lack of representation for that for sure.
Mm.
I will give a shout out to the Boulet brothers Dracula for
Yes.
helping represent the black queer community. Saint, the creator, one of the contestants, the level of just artistry and creation
Who
and
was
being
that?
able,
I haven't watched the season yet, but I've been told I
you'll
need to
have to
hurry up.
watch it.
I've been
Uh,
told to hurry the fuck up.
he is a tattooed, pierced, queer fantasy like fashion type person that is just an amazing contestant on the show. And it's like one of the first times I've seen someone represented on TV that is of anyone that looks the way that he does and comes from the community that he comes from in that light. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? And he's killing it in the show. And it doesn't feel like it's because of some performative like, oh, we're gonna let you win. It's like, no, he's kicking ass,
Okay.
and I don't really care for the I'm gonna get like a gasp and clutching pearls from gay people, but I don't care for the show that much. Because I have my own opinions because art is subjective.
Yep.
But I really appreciate what they're doing for a lot of different people from the trans community, from people who are non-binary, and even for the Asian community too. There's been some great representation of people that bring in stuff from their own culture, from their background, their family. It's been really beautiful to watch them use that in their art and their creation in the show,
I
and
love
not be
it.
judged for it in a way that's like demeaning or subversive. It's like really powerful.
Ooh,
But
I better get on it because my
you should. It's good. Yeah.
my
It's
sis
on
Abby.
Shutter. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. She keeps telling me, like, get in this show. Why haven't you watched this? I'm like, I'm so sorry.
I'm actually surprised you're not watching it.
I was
it's very
I was
much
on it.
like your kind of thing. Yeah.
It is. And I was on it last year. I had caught up on every episode.
Yep.
I'm distracted. It's beautiful as fuck up here. I'm sorry. I
Oh, I
can't
know.
help it.
Like I
Privilege.
literally I've been reading, and that's the thing too. Like
And reading.
if there's anybody around that's watching this, part of being a writer too is making sure you are also reading and absorbing other artists' work because it's helpful. It's really helpful.
Ray was the one
Yeah.
that taught me that, because I was like, I can't write. Like years ago, I was like, I can't write. I didn't go to college for it until I
Hmm.
read Medicine for not Medicine for Melancholy, his memoir. I can't remember the name. And he was it's around here somewhere. He was saying that I didn't go to college. His college and how he learned to write was the library. I mean, he
Oh yeah,
always
totally.
wrote.
Yeah.
Um, so just as an inspiration, my Angela didn't have a degree, but she read and she wrote from her experiences. So,
Yes. Yeah, because
it is
that's the
very
point.
important to read.
It's the point of creating is that it has to be your authentic voice. What is your
Mhm.
signature voice? And that's what I think was lost even with what we're talking about is, the last episode of each half of the double feature, like it just lost its signature somewhere along
It
the
did.
way. It fell flat. It really did.
And I wanna know what happened, but I doubt we'll ever get an answer. I mean, would you, given the opportunity, give an answer as to what happened? Like, we never got answers of what happened with season 8 of Game of Thrones. We never got any clarity
No, and
on some of
then
this
even with
stuff.
Game of Thrones, now they're like, "Oh, let's go back in time to talk about the fucking
No,
blonde hair, blue-eyed crazy people." Like,
no.
who
I wanted
cares?
no, I don't
Who
give a fuck
fucking
now.
cares?
You
Who
destroy
cares?
a
Yeah.
relic for
If
me.
anything, bring back Khal Drogo, show him naked as many times as you want.
Show his dick, please.
Like, can we just
Show
do
his
that?
dick. I wanna see White Walker dick too. Okay?
Oh, you do?
I
Okay.
wanna see yeah, I wanted to see the White Walker. He says I have that here, White Walker dick. No,
Is it look like an icicle? Is that what you're
sometimes. When it
sometimes?
does, I
Okay.
can't see it.
It's translucent.
It's a good description. Anyways, we'll wrap this up, but I just want to say, Z, you're the best. And I feel like these are just, again, these chats that we have are for me and my friends to get out shit that we need to talk about. So I have a feeling
Yes.
that we're going to have quite a few more episodes to go.
I think overall we'll survive next week. We'll be fine. But just, the thing that I always say is to anyone, the easiest advice that I give is please don't be a piece of shit. Just don't be a piece of shit. It's not that hard. Like,
It takes more effort to be an asshole. It
it
really,
really does.
I've been there. It really does. Some people I can't help
Yeah.
but be an asshole to, but
Yeah.
it really does take more effort. I
Yes.
love that you said you gave your tagline. Don't be a piece of shit. Stop. We know
That
we'll be
is
okay. I can't wait to
yes.
hear. I'm gonna follow up on what you actually do next week. Honestly, I want to know what you do, what you end up deciding to do on that particular day.
Well, I'll
Uh,
probably do a series of live streams just
okay,
to pass the time.
okay. I want to
Yeah.
get in on that while I'm
Yeah.
probably eating tacos. I don't intend to go anywhere because I don't do that
Yeah.
a lot unless it involves a
What am I
river or trees.
Oh, and then this weekend I'll be at the Witches Brew. I'm coming back to do readings for the event in Santa Ana. Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
yes.
I'm actually just gonna start going to all of them because why not?
You may as well. There's
I have nothing else to do. So
but it feels like home at those
and
at
it's
those night markets.
I'm very comfortable there and I feel so
Yes.
welcomed there. And I'm so appreciative and so grateful for that community of people. So
Oh, and it is a unique community, not for
yeah.
everybody, so don't even try it if you have a little
Yeah.
bit of
Oh,
apprehension.
and I did text you, but I was serious. I think I want to start also hosting horror conventions and award shows. So if you
I'm
know
but
anyone,
I think that would be absolutely phenomenal. I know a lot of people, and maybe you can
yeah,
bring your ass up here too.
yeah, that would be cool. Maybe we could do our own horror show, like
I've been
horror
thinking
awards
about
show.
it. I've been thinking about it. But let me write some shit first.
I know I'm ready
Okay,
to
everyone, you
travel.
can definitely make sure you're following Zachariah the Witch. You still have your 15% off deal going on for the rest of the month.
Oh no,
Head
it's not 15% off. It's $15 for a 3 to
Oh,
4
fuck!
card email reading. Yes.
Oh my god, that is a fucking steal. Tell me you're making some money off of this. Um, sorry, I had wine.
Yeah.
$15 readings for the rest of the month. Get on it. Get on
Yeah.
it.
Yeah.
This is a deal that you don't want to miss. I think I might be
Oh, and
gifting
then my
some
Cyber
people.
Monday deal, I'm not going to say what it is, but you're going to be like, "What?" So,
Don't make me mad at you.
yeah. Yeah.
You're
I'm
valuable.
going to start an OnlyFans.
Don't do it there. Go to
Just-
number my head, he says you're number one subscriber, but I also know somebody else who would too.
yes.
You know, love you. Zachariah's like, you made this weird. Everyone, just go ahead and follow Zachariah the Witch for all the details. How about that?
Yes, please do. Please do.
And you'll
Absolutely.
be able to watch this show anytime on YouTube, and it'll be on Anchors, all your podcast listening platforms by tomorrow morning.
Oh
So
shit, we're going to be audio too.
yeah,
Oh.
yeah, I got
We're gonna,
fancy. That's
next
where
time we
that's where
should
it's
do
all
next time we need to do ASMR.
at. Have a great night. And honestly, whatever you do for Thanksgiving, just don't be what Zachariah says.
Don't be a piece of shit.